Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Steck with Artburst Studios, and I'm so delighted that you're joining us today for one of my favorite parts about Artburst. Artburst is all about artists and featuring their work and introducing them to you because there are incredible artists, well, around the world for sure. But these are artists that you may not have had the opportunity to meet before. And we always love making that introduction just so you don't miss their fabulous work. Today, we're featuring artists Pamela Beer, Amelia Furman, and Alissa Davies. In 2 weeks from last Thursday, so a couple of days ago, our Momentum Show will open. So the Momentum Show opens on February 20th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time on artburststudios.com. The beautiful thing about an online show is that you can sit at home in your favorite chair, put on your bunny slippers, grab your favorite drink, and just really be immersed in the world of all of these artists. A couple tips on how to successfully navigate an Artburst show, since this may be your very first time visiting an online art show. Number one, well, anyone can visit the show when the show opens. There are a couple things you can do to get kind of a bit of an advantage as the show opens. Number one, subscribe on the website. Subscribers get a 24-hour advance preview of the whole show collection. So we have 151 original works of art, and you're going to want to take the time studying each one and finding the details, reading the stories about them, and the most fun part is zooming in on the pictures of all of the art. Number two, if you create a free account in advance, then when the show goes live, if you find a piece and put it in your cart, then you'll be able to purchase that piece right away as long as you've logged in before the show goes live. So we encourage you to get a free account. But if neither one of those things, appeal to you at this point, just know when the show opens that you will have access to all of the beautiful art created by these artists. The last tip for now, number three, is don't forget to check your time zone. Now the show opens at 10 a.m. in Denver. That's where that's where I'm located. So in Colorado, so we're in the Mountain Standard Time Zone. So you'll want to check the time zone if you live in another part of the world, just so you make sure and be there right on time when the show opens. Now the show lasts for, I think, 54 hours, so it's a quick show. So if you're not there right at 10 o'clock, no worries. You can join us later in the day. You can join us the following day, but if you have a particular piece in mind that you want to get, then you'll want to be there right at 10 a.m. So we want to welcome our first artist for today. I know you don't want to hear from me this whole time. We want to hear from the artists. Let's go ahead and we're going to welcome Pamela Beer. Hi, Pam.
Hi.
Oh my goodness. I just love your background.
Oh, thank you.
So I may like knock on your door one of these days just so that I can pop into your studio because it looks so fabulous in there.
Well, you're welcome to come paint with me.
Oh, that's even better. That's even better. Oh,
Yeah.
so Pam is joining us for the first time in one of our Artburst shows, and we just love featuring new artists that people haven't seen before. So can you tell us about yourself and your creative journey, Pam?
Yes. I have been painting for, I don't know, maybe close to 40 years, but I started in earnest, from a business perspective about, I don't know, 15 years ago when I left my corporate job. And I started with watercolor. Then I moved into acrylic kinds of things. And then I wanted, because I wanted to get bigger. And then I wanted to learn how to use oil paint. So I learned how to use oil and cold wax, and I took some programs and some workshops from the cold wax masters. And it took me a while to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with this medium because it's messy and the tools are different. I mean, I don't use brushes. I use things like this, like brayers and these Mezomeister squeegee tools and my imagination. And most of the work, Jennifer, that I do is I like to start out very chaotic and then work my way into something that's a little more managed and peaceful, because my whole journey is about taking the craziness in the world and making it a more serene kind of an experience. And so with the artwork that I make, I like to put calm and peaceful and open passages in it so that it feels fresh and open, but yet there's a lot of stuff going on. And that's what makes it fun for me, because I get to make a mess and not really care, and then I get to rein it in.
Do you start with an idea in mind that then develops into something, or do you just go for it?
Well, and that depends. For this show, when you and I had talked, we talked about how much you loved my I had a series called Loose Structures, which was kind of, adapting the buildings and barns and all the things here in northern Montana that I see every day into something modern. And you liked those, and so when I came in to do this series, I had that intention. But I certainly don't start out going, I'm going to make this. I let the paint and the colors and my mood and what's going on around me eventually shape what I'm doing. I mean, I set an intention, all that said, I set an intention and then work to that intention. And then a lot of times, though, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I just paint, and then the painting tells me I want to be this or I want to be that, and then I can, work that out. So yeah, and there's a couple of those in the show. There's some loose structures, but I threw in a couple others in the show that just sort of became.
I love that. And I think sometimes I work that same way where, you just
Yeah.
need to put something down on the canvas just to get started. Because I find sometimes I have this big block and this big idea or expectation of something, and it stops me in my tracks and I can't move. And so by, just going in and putting something down, it allows me to actually discover things in the paint that I never would have seen or even created before.
That's true. You make some unique discoveries. You discover color combinations that work together that you didn't know, and shapes and design, and then all this histories underneath, which I think is, to me, that's what makes an artwork so unique. You can't duplicate that. I mean, you can't just go out and copy someone who's done that. And for me, that feels more authentic.
Yes.
So that's what I like. Yeah, yeah.
So when I look behind you, so there's a number of paintings behind you that are in the show. I see a color palette.
Mhm.
So what has drawn you to those colors that are featured in your works for this show?
Well, I like to work with a limited palette predominantly, and I love orange and turquoise. It's like my favorite colors, and I love making neutral colors with colors. And so a couple of these have some very neutrally warm colors, and so combining the paint that I have to come up with that and make sure all the colors harmonize that I put down is fun to me. It's a little scientific, it's a little experimental. It's kind of got all of that involved in it, and the way these paints work with the oil and cold wax is there's a lot of transparencies. So some of the mixing gets done on my table here, on my glass table, and some of the mixing gets done actually on the canvas itself, which is wood. So working on the wood panels. Yeah. And I can scratch it and mark it up and change it and just keep going
Um,
and be surprised every day. Yeah.
oh, yeah, how fun is that?
It is. It's
So
great fun.
you're gonna show us teasers of some of the work for the show. We can
Sure.
see.
Okay. Let me give you a quick pano of the studio, and then I'll turn this around so that you can see. Let me do this little button here and turn it around. There we go. So on that end of the studio are kind of the tools and rollers hanging, and my tabaret that has paint all over it for my grandmother, the thinking chair, the
I need
bookshelf, the
to
thinking
share.
chair. You need a thinking chair. And then sometimes I do acrylic things, and I'm getting ready to teach a class, so I've, kind of been working on that. And here's my table that I
Wow.
have set up, and I'm working on those little pieces in my sketchbook. And then on the far end, I mean, this is heated out here. Believe me, we need it. And then I've got a storage space and then a stack of wood panels we make in-house that are ready to go and ready to be painted on. And then I put a station over here, up in there, to draft air because sometimes I work in caustic,
Mm-hmm.
and so and then sometimes resin. So I do a lot of different things. But I'll look at this piece here. This was what I was talking about with the limited palette to get down to some more of the neutrals in this little community piece. And then this piece here, which I think Jennifer, you had said that you enjoyed very much last time we talked.
Yes.
But and then here, these pieces.
So show us the big piece there.
Okay, let me move around to that side.
You have some statement pieces that can actually highlight a room, and this is one of them.
Yes, this piece is 40 by 40, so it's a rather large piece. It's on wood panel. It's definitely ready to hang. And I've painted the sides. I think I painted the sides black, but that can be adjusted. If someone wants a frame, we can put a frame on it. Um, but this piece is sort of representative of community. There's just so much going on here. And I had started this. There's just a ton of texture under it. Let me get a little bit closer. Weirdly enough, there's a little person in here. Whoop, let me get to it. See?
Oh, there is.
There's a little person. I used to do a lot of figurative work. I haven't put that in these except for this one and one other one. I put some figures in. But these have just like a bunch of texture. You could see the depth and the texture. And I could not get that with brushes. This is like 8 to 10 layers of paint.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to be visiting the art store, I can tell.
You need a statement piece.
Well,
Um,
yeah, the tools that you use make such different marks and I think I'd love to play with that myself. But so that's a lot of your collection on that wall there. There
I
meant
think this is all of it. Yeah, I think yes, I put all of it up, and I wanted to take this piece and show you. I put them in the ones that aren't framed yet. I'm going to do that
oh,
so
nice.
that it's in a very nice, very contemporary frame because these are very contemporary pieces.
Yes, they're beautiful. They're beautiful. So as all of you see this, you can see that Pam's created in a variety of sizes so that there's something if you want to highlight a particular smaller space, you want something that brings some joy and story to a smaller space. She has those pieces as well as a large space so that, when somebody walks in the room, they immediately are impacted by the beauty of some of the larger pieces as well. So, Pam, it's been just such an honor to host you in the show, and we can't wait until art lovers see your whole collection. Now, we always have a short period of time to do these interviews, but is there anything that you would like to add that you that art lovers should know about you and your work?
I am pretty isolated here in northern Montana, and I have all this beauty around me. So the things that I make reflect some of that feeling that I get, that spacious feeling, and that's just who I am and what I enjoy. Though I have lived all over the world and traveled, This is my home. This is what I love. And my heart is in every piece that I put together.
I can see it in every piece. When the virtual curtains open on February 20th, I think people are just going to fall in love with you and with your work. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll
Oh,
see you in less than 2 weeks.
thank you. It's my honor. And it opens on the 20th, which is my birthday.
Oh, yay. Okay. We'll have to sing you happy birthday. That's
Yeah.
a good birthday to have. So, all right. Well, we'll be seeing you soon then.
Okay, and bye.
Thank you. So isn't Pam's work just amazing? It's like, I don't know if I have enough walls in my house to fill with everybody's art because everybody else's work is amazing as well. And so just a note, when you see the show, you will be able to go in and every piece of art has its own page that contains the dimensions and the story and, shipping information, all that kind of stuff. But the artists have pictures of their work, and the beautiful thing is you'll be able to run your cursor over that particular piece and photo, and it zooms in so you can see that person that I never saw in that painting before. You can look closer. So we love that about the Artburst site, that it allows you to go in and really look closely to that. So next up is Amelia Furman, and Amelia's from Colorado, so she's not too far away from me. So, hi, Amelia.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful. Oh my gosh, your background's very cool as well.
Thank you.
So you're a returning artist, so you've joined us for a previous show, and you're back
Mhm.
sharing your next collection. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell everybody about you and your creative journey.
So, kind of like Pam, I've been at this for a while. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, so had nature scenes around me all the time, farm fields, forests, all sorts of things. And I went to art school, and graduated in 2003. And so I've been at this for 20 years, like successfully being a business for maybe like 10. The first 10 years was more like, what the heck am I doing? And trying to figure it all out. So,
I think we can all relate to that.
yes, yeah. And I do, there were some, some changes in trajectory and stuff. So I got married right out of college. And then we didn't have kids until about 7 years in. So kind of like right in the middle when I was really starting to gain some momentum, we had kids instead. That shifted momentum drastically.
Yes,
So,
that
yeah,
does that.
sure. I remember when I was in my studio in Philly because we moved down to Philly after school. I still remember like rocking Ethan's little rocker chair and stuff with my foot as I was trying to paint and finish like a commission for a corporate client. And yeah, so there's a lot of that happening, or like having him strapped onto me while I was trying to finish computer stuff. And
Well, it's kind of cool that our families are part of the journey.
absolutely, they play into my work all the time. So
So
yeah.
how did you land in Colorado? And then how did your artwork develop to where it is today?
So we moved out here for the same reason that most people move out here. We went and visited and we're like, oh, this is gorgeous. And then my husband, it took a little bit longer to convince because he's a slow mover. He needs a long runway for his momentum. And so we moved out here and actually followed my brother out here. And really like my journey in this particular style that I work in had started a couple years after I graduated from college. And so I just kind of continued on this like mixed media journey as I moved out here. And a lot of the landscape types of materials and stuff that I was looking at, the scenes that were grabbing my attention, they shifted a bit. And they have throughout the years. Like, for a really for several years when we moved out here, I was just enchanted with the mountains, the huge skies, the vibrant blues that just like took your breath away. And so you'd see like in particular years, like I'd focus in on that. And then I started remembering my roots, and really started kind of going back to like, I want to explore what forests look like. I want to explore all of that type of thing. And so now there's quite a range of landscapes that I've produced at this point.
Tell us about your process and how your pieces begin because they're so unique in how they develop.
Usually, like the way my process usually works, but I don't like to keep myself in a box. So some things, sometimes it changes, but for the most part, what I do is it starts with what I'm seeing on the outside. So our family spends a decent amount of time outside. So we go on hikes, we walk. We have a dog, and we take him on walks all the time. We go on trips, and so I always have my camera with me on my phone, and I snap pictures of the landscape scenes and the botanical little vignettes and stuff that really draw my attention. And I kind of get this sense of like, I want to paint that, or I want to see what happens if I try to paint that. And so those usually are the catalyst for the piece. And then at the same time that I'm, journeying around outside, I'm also a pretty introspective person. And so and almost to a fault because I overthink things a lot. And I'm sure there's other people that relate, like, what's going on in my head? Like, and I'll analyze and so I journal a lot and I spend a lot of time in prayer and reflection and things like that. And so I usually have a pretty good sense of what's going on internally as I'm then looking around on the outside too. And so that tends to also play into my process. So those things are going on at the same time. And then they converge in the studio. And that's where a lot of the collage process comes in. I'll bring in, the landscape images or the botanical images that are really drawing my attention. And then I ask, what is this saying to me? What is the God who made all of this? What's he trying to tell me? And so then the whole collage process is really my response to that, me trying to figure it out. So it's very much like it evolves as it goes. I have a couple of pieces I start with, and then I start looking around the studio. I get kind of frustrated. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. And I'll just start kind of looking through magazines and different materials, and it starts to come together, and it starts to create this pretty clear message that I want embedded into the piece. And I hate to tell everyone, but it's almost always just for me. It's not for anybody else. But if they resonate with it, that just makes me so happy. And so that collaging process, then when I feel the story is complete, then I start to bring the landscape image back on top, and I do that in oils of or layers of oil paint. And I do it in such a way so that the internal story that I've uncovered remains seen in bits and pieces. And so then that kind of whispers through that external layer of the painting process. And so as people come closer to the piece, they start to realize, oh, there's more stuff in there. And then it starts to kind of surprise them. And for some people, it makes them a little bit uncomfortable, but it doesn't vulnerability do that? Like that's what it does. And I'm drawn to that tension that happens. And so my whole like journey in this is trying to figure out that balance and like that place of tension that just kind of creates a vibration. And so, yeah. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
It does. I think most of the artists, and especially the artists today, something you said is that as people get closer, they notice something else. And what I love about the paintings from all three of you is that you'll see it, but it keeps telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you look at it, you're going to see something different and something new. So it's not, it's like every time you walk into the room, a new part of it is going to be revealed. So it feels like the painting's kind of growing with you over time. And I just love the ability of artists to do that, and your work definitely does that.
Right. And that's been so fun to see too with collectors, where they'll come and engage with the work either at a show or a festival, and they'll start to see their story in the images, in the text. But it's always different than mine. But there's such a beautiful connection and that is just thrilling to see, like how their interpretation is just unique to their experience. And I love that. That's my favorite when that happens.
Mine too. Okay, well, you were going to show us around, I
Mhm.
think.
Okay, so first off, this is one of my little sons. He's not very little anymore, but he's also doing his own creative thing. So this is my studio. It is kind of a cubicle type of setup in a bigger space. And I apologize, it's not very cleaned up.
Oh, no, when we're working, I don't know about you, but there's stuff everywhere.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I get to a point where I'm like, I can't even function. I'm gonna have to clean some stuff up. Um, but yeah, so typically like this is where I do most of my admin stuff. I've got reference books over here. I'll meet clients in here and set up some chairs. Um, where I like do most of my collaging is kind of over on these two tables. And then this is where I keep all my supplies. So most of my materials are sheet music, old newsprint. I tear books apart. And so there's all sorts of things going on over here. And then over here is typically where I do most of my painting. So I usually have a couple pieces going on at a time. And then that allows me to kind of, move back and forth. Like as the oil is drying, I can go work on something else or, stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay, well, show us some of your pieces. You also have at least one huge statement piece, I
I
believe.
do, yeah. Here, I'll show that to you since I have this up. So this is a 36 by 36. And its story is more about the stopping of momentum. This piece is about my past, my childhood. My brother actually drove one of our cars down a hill. And so you can see kind of like the car tracks. And this beautiful tree, perfectly placed, stopped him from continuing to build momentum and potentially ending things. He was 4 at the time, so he didn't know what he was doing. He forever then had the nickname Crash. So that was his nickname after that. But that lovely tree stopped his momentum. And so the whole piece is really about that. Uh,
I just want to step into it. There's
oh,
something really beautiful about that space. And
mhm,
while it represents that story, and you can see the tire tracks through there,
mhm.
there's something also very peaceful about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting. And this is kind of part of the story that goes along with it. The tree actually, because of the damage to it, had to be cut down. It didn't live very long after the crash. And so it got cut down. So when I went to actually go paint it, I didn't have a tree I could use. I tried to kind of pull the memories together from it. And also, my dad was kind of helping me figure out like what kind of tree it was, what kind of reference I could use. And he, is adamant that it was a sumac tree. And when I started looking at reference, I'm like, there are not any sumac trees the way I remember this tree. And as I continued to research, I found that there was a tree that gets mistaken for sumacs a lot, and it's called a tree of heaven. And I was like, "Bah, it's beautiful."
The music sounded and the
Yeah, yeah. So it's one of those things where I don't exactly know what tree it was, but yeah, it was really really good to do that piece and work through that. So
I
yeah.
love the research that goes into that. And so you have some smaller pieces as well.
Do. So along with my big statement pieces, and I do have another one that's an aspen tree, and
Oh,
that's about 20 by 40. So those are then I have another one too that's a 40 by 20. So those are great, bigger pieces that can really anchor a space. But I also have these beautiful little minis. So these are 6 by 6. And with my work, the collage actually is wrapped around the edges. So you don't have to frame them. You can, but the story continues over the edges of the piece. And as you can see in this one, you can see some of the figures and stuff in there. There's quite a bit going on. This one's called Don't Look Back. So yeah, little pieces. There's several of these in the collection as well. And I do have a couple framed pieces as well, that are more like studies for bigger pieces, that I did on flat panels. So excited to share those as well.
I love those. So,
Yeah.
and that, the other beautiful thing of this is, you can see a lot of times as artists, we have particular palettes of color that we work in. And if you have a larger space to fill, you can fill it with several smaller pieces that actually feel like they go together. And so now's the time to start measuring those spaces every once they have an idea. An artist once told me she was moving into a new space, and one of her friends is an interior designer, and said, always leave one wall empty because you never know when you're going to discover that piece. And so if you've left a wall empty and you discover that piece, then, we'd love for you to add it to your collection and to really get to know the artist who created it. Now, Amelia, do you have anything that you would like to add?
The only thing I would say is like for this particular momentum collection, as you're looking at the work, like the thing that kind of anchors it came from a friend of mine, an artist friend of mine. We both were talking about the momentum concept, and I'm like, how am I going to do this? I paint trees; they don't go anywhere. Um, I was thinking about momentum in a very different way. And so she helped me kind of like think about like Newton's laws of motion, how objects at rest stay at rest, and objects in motion stay in motion unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. And that really got me thinking about just the different unbalanced forces that either stop momentum or start momentum, what happens in the middle. And so like my pieces really kind of look at like they're external obviously, but so much of the story behind them is just that internal story about momentum and when it's stopping, when it's starting, and what happens in the middle. So just wanted to share that so you have some kind of context for looking at the collection.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, welcome back, Amelia. We're always delighted to work with you, and all of the artists have been able to see kind of the whole show collection behind the scenes, and so it's just an amazing group of artists and incredible work. So your work fits right in with all of that, and we're thrilled to have you back.
Well, I'm excited to be back, and thank you so much for giving me a chance to come on again.
Sounds good. Okay, well, we'll see you at showtime.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we have one final artist with us today, but for those of you just joining us, I'm Jennifer Steck with Artburst Studios. These are some of our favorite artists from the upcoming show. Now, we are featuring work from 14 different artists at the Momentum Show being held on artburststudios.com, and 151 original works of art in all shapes, sizes, and price points. So you're bound to find something that you absolutely love. So next, I'm excited to bring Alissa Davies in to share her story with you. And of course, some teasers of her artwork.
Hi, Jennifer.
Good morning, Alissa. Now you're a Colorado girl too.
I am. Yeah, I'm in Carbondale right now, in Carbondale, Colorado.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, I can see your work of art next to you with all of those bold, bold colors. We were so excited when you agreed to join us for the Momentum Show. So tell us about your journey.
I loved hearing, Pam and Amelia. It's neat to notice the connections and how you resonate with, with different artists. And your little ties together. It's really fun. Um, I've been making art since I was a kid. I have a Waldorf school background, which is a very artistic form of schooling, and I had very supportive and artistic parents on my journey. I grew up on the coast of Maine, um, and went to a liberal arts school and studied studio art there. I got to spend, I call it my junior year abroad in the big city of Chicago. I did go to art school for 1 year, and it was really informative because it exposed me to 3D classes, 4D classes, things that I didn't have at my other college, and also art therapy classes, which really ended up being something that I really, really resonated with. I would say that I tried it after art school. I didn't paint for a long time. There was a lot of there was a lot of resistance around that, and I felt for such a long time that I had to, you know, follow the art rules. Try to be representational. Kind of watch what my peers were doing and kind of copy that in a way. It took getting pregnant with my first kiddo. And it was a big shock. Not that it wasn't planned, but it really upended my world. And I realized that I had to turn to both nature and to my art process to kind of help me through the myriad of feelings that I was experiencing. And that's when I started to just throw the art rules out the window and purely start to kind of go back to that art therapy base a little bit and kind of start to make for me first and foremost. Like I really resonated with what Amelia said of just like this process, and now it continues to be. It's first and foremost for me, and then it kind of ends up as a final product that I sometimes put out in the world for other people. So I like to say that my first kid, my son, kind of made me the artist that I am because I still work very intuitively and very abstractly. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I think, when I look back, it's been the same for me. Art has been therapy, and those rules. I've heard from a number of artists who've been in art school that sometimes you have very specific deadlines and you're working hard, and then when art school is over, those deadlines go away, and sometimes it's hard to keep that momentum going that you had. And I love that you've been able to find your way back in a new way to really experience the art that you create.
Yeah, I think I'm just not of the crit high, kind of it was very competitive atmosphere, and I just don't view art that way. I think we all have creative impulses inside and we all have the ability to actually make art. And so I always have leaned more towards the art therapy kind of mentality of it being a healing, you watch kids and they make effortlessly in any sort of way, and we get put into these labels. And I don't, yeah. So it was hard. Painting classes were hard at art school in many
I,
ways.
I can't imagine, but I do know about the comparing yourself.
Right. Right.
I think we all do that,
We do.
and for me, speaking for myself, it's like I always find myself feeling like I'm lacking something, that I can't live up to, what's in my head. And the beauty is that nobody can create the art we create. Nobody can create that beautiful painting that is sitting next to you there but you.
Right. Right. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the most beautiful things about the artistic practice, right?
Isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? So, let's talk a little bit about your process. It also includes multiple layers. So, how do your paintings develop?
Um, well, as much as possible, I try to turn this off first and foremost. I don't come to the blank canvas or panel with any preconceived idea of what's going to happen. So I usually try to choose like a warm or a cool palette, always with black and white in it as well. Um, and I just try to work pretty fast at first. It's just ways to kind of turn off the mind and drop into the body and really start to work with like what's inside there. So my first layers are often, I like to say they're kind of like the crazy teenage years. They're just chaotic and wild and clashing and all over the place. I flip my canvas a lot as I'm working, and I work on multiple pieces at once, just so I, again, can kind of trick the brain to kind of not get attached too fast. And I just try to stay in that zone as much as possible. I usually have fun music playing. I'm dancing around. I work with my non-dominant hand, or even just pick the paint up with my bare hand, and just trying to keep it as loose and open and as true for what is needing to be expressed as possible.
We're going to have you do a video of you,
Yeah.
how it starts, because
Yeah.
it would be really fun to watch.
Yeah.
So what mediums do you work in?
I work in acrylic. I add a lot of mixed media in, so graphite, oil pastel, acrylic pens. I used to work in oils, and then when I moved into my home, it just felt safer to work in acrylics, and I've just grown to just love them because they're so quick drying.
Yeah.
So you can take a risk or try something out, and you can move quickly, and then you'll be like, oh, wait, this color, and you can go back and just really change them fast, and they layer so amazingly. I love too that you can keep them really thick and luscious, or you can use a more fluid type and, kind of do washes. So they're just beautiful for like layering. And like we've been talking about, it's just, there's so many histories and so many different parts of yourself and your journey through weeks or days or whatever, that are underneath those layers. And I kind of love having pieces of that come through, or just knowing that those kind of exist there. It's fun to have those, alternative stories behind the final layers.
Well, it is in those final layers. I mean, every one of those paintings has a glimpse of the first layer, and a
Right.
portion of the second layer, and and the layers just, I mean, they just add so much depth to
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah. Yeah. I have fun
Uh,
with that. Mhm.
Yes, the other thing I love about your work, and you mentioned this, that you use black and white are
Yeah.
always palette, and your work, many of your pieces contain that high contrast from the darkest to the lightest. What do you love about that?
Well, I think that's where then, as a painting kind of nears completion, I do a lot of like, I start to think more about the more art school concepts, right? So I squint a lot, and I love having. I mean, I just, the play of value, like the lights and the darks, really help things pop, right? So really help certain things come first, to the surface, and so that like interplay, and I just love that like relationship between the light and the dark. That could be like metaphoric, or it could be like in a painting, but whenever that starts to happen, it's like, oh, that's when you get really excited. I get really excited. Along with like color relationships. I think it's really important to like look at color wheels and kind of know that general theory, but I think it's also one of the most fun things when you find new color combinations that go together, and it just suddenly like clicks, and you're like, oh, I love those two colors together, and I never have done that before. So I start to think about color relationship, movement, the values, the lights and the darks, and start to think of it more as like a final completion, on the last few layers. And like I think Pam was saying, like the painting does start to kind of say, like, this is what I want to be, like this is the colors I want to be. This is what I'm kind of settling on, and that's how you kind of start to know that you're done. It's, and some come together really easily and effortlessly, it feels like. And some you're like, okay, I have to put you aside for a couple months, or
For
sometimes a year,
years, or
Yeah, exactly.
I can absolutely relate to that.
Yeah.
So what inspires you, and how do you push through those creative barriers?
I too spend a lot of time outside. I'm a big trail runner. I love being outside with my dog. We spend a lot of time as a family outside. So I'm always attuned to the colors of the seasons and what's changing. I love finding like pods and kind of neat textures within leaves or bark or stuff like that. So it's always kind of noticing the world around you, right? My kids are a little older now, but I think I said on one of our meetings of just like always trying to get back to kind of how I feel like I made art when I was a kid. And I love watching kids make art because there's just that like inhibition and not that sense of that inner critic or telling you like, you don't do that or you don't do that. But then it's really purely, again, just like my process for myself. So it's like what's going on in my interior landscape that kind of needs to be expressed in nonverbal ways. And that's a huge inspiration of just kind of letting that be, what needs to come out onto the canvas. So
Yeah.
yeah. And to push through creative barriers, I mean, I'll show you a piece that has like a completely different story in it underneath, but if I start to feel in my body, if I start to feel really tight, I know that like I'm entering terrain that something needs to shift. It's not that it's always fun to come in here and work. It doesn't always end up that way, but the tightness is a real indicator that I'm getting too precious too fast, usually about something. And that I'm not allowing that kind of more intuitive place to kind of flow and to kind of take risks and be brave. So I usually, like I said, flip my canvas a lot. I'll just put it aside. I'll go outside and move my body, or I'll put on a really fun dance song and dance around. And I just always show up. I mean, I try to come in every day and at least do, if it's only half an hour, I think the consistency of coming and putting something down, whether it gets covered over the next time, which it often does, or if no one sees that piece, it's like a muscle, right? It's like anything. We have to just keep showing up for ourselves and for the practice. So,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah.
you're gonna give us some teasers of some of your work. So
So that I was going to show two because they're smaller, and these will be framed eventually, but they kind of go together. There's four of them in this series. You can see the texture in that one up there. I
love
love using spray bottles, are like one of my favorite tools.
it.
It's like really but I'm really influenced by water and my roots too of back in the ocean, even though I've lived in the mountains for like 20 plus years now. Like the ocean is like one of my most favorite places to be. And so these ones are both, well, this one's river talk. So, because I live near a river now. So it kind of has that motion. And this is moon tide,
Oh,
just
lovely.
talking about the moon and the tides and the connection. And those will be framed. Actually, they're not framed yet, but they'll be framed in like a gold frame, floater frame. So it's a little bit more modern. I'm in a pretty new studio, and my studio is really not put together, so I'm not going to give a tour.
Yet, sometime in
Yeah.
the future we'll get a tour.
Okay. So this piece, what it feels like to unspool. I wish I had a before piece of this. It was one of those challenge pieces where it was fine, and I just looked at it and I was just like, I, I don't always like fine. Like fine isn't a great word. I don't resonate with that. And so it felt really tight. It felt really contained. So I just went for a dog walk with my big fluffy beast and just tried to just let it go. And I kind of came back and I just flipped the canvas and just worked, like, even though it was done, I just kind of worked quickly again and it became a completely different piece. Like it's a lot more structured and even different colors underneath there. And so that like that's what I mean, not that, like I think as artists we all have favorite pieces, but I also try to always, like, if a piece doesn't feel like what it's supposed to feel like or supposed to be, then it's not ready to be put out into the world. So that was one of those pieces that kind of has a whole different history and story underneath.
Oh, love it. Okay, we want to
And
see.
then, yeah, this is the big one. Let's see if I can try to. Uh,
Oh,
the 36 by 48. Sorry, I can't really. Yeah, and I love to wrap my paintings around the edges too. It's a pretty deep they're pretty deep. It's the same width as that.
Oh, I love the depth of those candles.
Because I love that you can frame them if you want, but like I love wrapping them around too and just, continuing the piece to the edges. And that piece, was started last fall. There was a lot of energy, a lot of big feelings that had to come out, and that is what that piece continued to be. It's called Reclamation, and that's just a good. I mean, working big really allows. I love working small too, but being big allows your whole body to get into it and to really let like the bigger feelings kind of come out. And so that's what that piece kind of started with and continues to be. So
Oh my gosh, that bold red. The
yeah, I
it's
love
such
reds.
a powerful thing with the black and white and red, and then the touch of the goldy kind of yellow color just yeah, just pops it. So stunning. Stunning, Alissa. So what else would you like art lovers to know?
Well, I think this journey so far with Artburst has just been so great. You're so supportive, and the marketing pieces is just it's just a very the whole packet has such a good feel to it. And so I just like like being held in that way as I created this body of work, it felt a little daunting at first to be like, okay, 10 new pieces, but like to sink into that theme, I think what like Amelia was talking about, like momentum and kind of what I was saying earlier of just the gentle showing up, right? Of showing up every day. It doesn't have to be fast. Momentum does not have to be fast. It just can be this slow process, and you kind of just chip away, and then they start to kind of appear. These paintings have just started to kind of appear and become what they wanted to become. And so yeah, it was a really fun journey, and like continues to be. And I thank you so much and for all your support. It's been really fun so far.
Oh, well, thank you. I think, when I look back at what Pam was talking about, that sense of community, we're
Yeah,
all in our studios working by ourselves in many cases, and experiencing those waves of emotions that come through, that one of the besides family, one of the most supportive communities I found is our fellow artists. You know,
totally.
and you talked about it. How amazing is it that we don't really know each other personally, but we have all of these connections that really bring us and tie us together. And that's what I especially love about all of us coming together for kind of that common purpose to show the world our art and to have our voices heard. And we're all traveling the same journey with those same doubts, with those same emotions and those same inner critics,
Right.
you're not good enough, you're not, whatever the case is. And I just find artists to be some of the most courageous people I know. It's hard to put your work out there in the world, especially knowing how much love and emotion goes into each piece. So we are thrilled that you have joined us, Alissa, and absolutely adore your collection. So we will see you when the show starts. But Mary posted in the comments, artists create art for themselves. The beauty they give is such a wonderful perspective to others. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And what I love about the artists in the show is how a theme word, one word can really impact all of us in so many ways, whether it's those small movements of momentum, or the big raging flood of things. You're going to find artwork in all those levels. But congratulations on a beautiful collection.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks so much. This has been so fun.
It has been. Okay, well, we'll see you in a little less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. See you then.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Wasn't this special? I mean, it's just wonderful to pull all these people together. And I gotta say, we do these Artburst Live interviews so all of you can meet the artists, but it feeds me too, you know? And when I ask these questions to these artists, it's because I want to know more too. And what they provide for all of us as far as the artist side of the equation is more inspiration, more inspiration for us to show up every day and for us to sometimes just create that base layer that gives us the opportunity to move forward in different ways and to explore collage and working from the inside out and bringing a body of work together that really tells more about our stories. So we're so grateful that you're here today. I don't know about you, but most of us as artists, we're art collectors as well. And the art that means the most to me, that's around my house, is the art that has a story behind it. Something about that artist, not just the piece of art, but the artists themselves connected with me at the time. And don't ever come over and ask me about my art collection, because you could be here for hours, because I would tell you about the time that I met somebody and what happened and how that piece really spoke to me at the time. And I think you're going to discover artists here that have stories that you can connect with. So let me just summarize by reminding you, the art show opens on artburststudios.com on the website on February 20th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. The homepage becomes the show page. So you can be on the homepage, with what the homepage looks like, and then just hit refresh at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And it's going to convert, and you are going to see the most amazing art. You'll be able to right now, if you've seen work that you love in the teasers that Artburst is providing or that the artists are providing, you can go on the website now and go to the show page and meet all these artists. If you can't wait till the 20th because you absolutely adore their work, click through to their websites. You'll see additional art on those pages. You can subscribe for their newsletters so that you can follow their journey. They're on a continual journey of growth. And so again, we hope to see you on the 20th. We would love it if you would share this video and their stories to everybody that you know. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll give you all the information you need so that you can have a successful treasure hunt on February 20th. So thank you for joining us this morning, and we'll see you in less than 2 weeks.